we want to welcome Millie Lwanga. Welcome to Spotlight tonight.
Thank you very much.
We're glad that you're joining us. Millie Lwanga, we know, was the former vice chair of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. She's presently a member of the Political Parties and Disputes Tribunal. She is also a governance expert and comes to us with a lot of experience of working with various arms of government and also being practicing an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And so we are very glad to be joined by you tonight.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good that you're here, especially after a bees situation.
You know?
Happening, these bees, you know, that were happening this day, they were kind of just, part of the commentary that was going on today was interrupted by these bees. And some people thought it's a natural phenomenon. Others thought it's a supernatural one. Others thought it's political. Really, what's your take on the bees? Apart from the 34 bees, apart from the forms, I mean, your take on the bees? I mean, they can't just land there on a day like today, specifically in that particular area.
For me, the interesting thing about it was that the police, with all their gear, were in a corner from these tiny insects. When they come in large numbers, even the police with their anti-riot gear are forced to go to a corner.
Talk about preparing for the wrong war, you know. Yeah.
Very true.
Yes.
You can't fight nature that way.
Because you came with all these rungus and shields and tear gases. Oh, tear gas doesn't work on bees, it seems.
It seems that the tear gas brings them out instead.
You know, it's interesting. But of course, I'm very sorry to all the people who actually suffered injuries, some of the people who couldn't move by themselves, the disabled who couldn't move fast enough, and others who were just innocent people. Of course, a big apology and a big, sorry for them for the situation. But all said and done, a big day in the Kenyan politics.
Yes.
And before we get there, we just want to bring something that came up in the last few days about an allegation that NASA lawyers have been having night meetings with judges. And of course, these are allegations. And when you think about it, if it be true, then it's really serious. If not be true, also it's equally serious because that's a huge allegation. But the question is this commonplace? From experience as a lawyer, is it commonplace that judges and lawyers would collude often?
It is not commonplace. It used to happen. I think that was sometimes in the 90s when they used to know which person to contact. A lot of the judges were contacted through their clerks. The court clerk was the focal point of getting to know them. Sometimes some of them through their spouses. It used to be then. But remember, we had a systematic, starting with the Ringera cleanup, we had a systematic process of trying to clean up the judiciary to ensure that this is reduced. Of course, you must remember that whether someone is seated at the bench or is at the bar, they're both lawyers. You'll find they were classmates, they were colleagues, they've been friends. So it is not unlikely that they would be perhaps able to chat. It becomes more awkward the older you grow, the longer you've been in the profession, because you find that these are people you have interacted with in one way or another. And there's tendency for you becoming quite casual, even in court, unlike for the younger lawyers who would be treating it completely as a bar bench relationship. But most members of the bench are taught to ensure that that relationship is guarded and that it is clear, because the perception that justice will be imparted is very key, even to the imparting of justice, so that litigants who are there will be able to feel that this judge is going to be impartial. I remember once in my life when I worked for a human rights organization, and there was a lady who came and she was complaining very bitterly. That was in the 90s when the judiciary was really being accused of corruption, that the judge was, the magistrate was very corrupt. And she said, they were setting the bribe amount right in my presence. Now, on going to investigate, we found that they were actually setting the bail terms. But because this process was completely unclear to the litigant, she was like, I had them talking. The man was told, give 30,000, and the next day I'm seeing him out, and yet he had committed an offense, and he's out, and the court is doing nothing. So it's very important for the court to be clear and to communicate that clearly, that yes, I know this person. And I've seen some judges do that. Someone would come and they would say that this is my classmate. As you said, I'm currently a member of the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal. And when we sit as a court, when we're determining issues, sometimes a person would come in and the chairman of the tribunal is a teacher and would say, this was my student and one of my favorite students at that time. So he makes it open to all the past parties that this was his student, this is somebody he has been teaching, and therefore there's already that relationship, that familiarity between them, so that if anyone feels uncomfortable with it, they can ask him to recuse himself, because that is the proper thing to do.
Yeah, because what's coming out here is that the ethics of,
yes.
Especially of this particular petition,
yes.
That if it is proved that there were those extensive and contacts that actually affected, in one way or other, the rulings, if it was proved to be so, what would be the repercussions from your end?
Well, the allegations that, really speaking, would be very difficult to prove, because having a conversation with a person is one thing. The nature of the conversation is another thing, because I can walk into a hotel and I meet you and I know you, and we sit and we say, hello, so how are you? You're having a drink, and you say, Millie, it's been a while. Maybe you can have a cup of coffee on me. And I have the cup of coffee and we discuss issues about my children and your children, and then I move on. That doesn't necessarily mean that you were trying to get me to decide a matter in your way, in your favor or the other. So it's not just having the contact. The contact is limited as much as possible to deal with the issue of perception. But these are human beings. They could meet, they could have contact for one innocent reason or another.
And what you're saying is it's very difficult to prove.
It's very difficult to prove, because unless you can show us the content of that conversation, that the meeting, if you can remember when we had the Tunoi petition, to show that, yes, somebody was sent to him, but under what purpose? Because remember that Kenyans are also very cunning. All someone needs to do is to be seated outside and send somebody, and the person walks in and they come out, and today we have all cameras, and somebody takes a picture and says, you see, this is the person walking out of the room. But when they entered the room, they were asking, is this room 30? And they come out. How do we know what they went to ask them?
And then also the flip side of it is, if the persons who are mentioned in this or being accused of having had some form of collusion, what if it's proved beyond doubt that they were not participating in what the petition actually says? Do they have a cause of action that they can take?
Yes, because that's the beauty of the law. There are various laws. There are defamation laws, there are slander laws, that you can actually prosecute to try and defend yourself in such instances. But should it be shown that, should they show on a strong balance of probabilities that the conversation was leading in that direction? Should they have an SMS that says, someone was sending a message saying that, okay, I'm coming, let's talk about the case, so make sure that you have finished about, something that is that
substantive.
Direct. Yes. Then it would be a most unfortunate circumstance, because then it would be very difficult to convince people that the conversations that they were having did not impact the manner in which this groundbreaking, this earth-shaking decision that was made, this unique decision that is only the third of its kind in the entire world, was made, that it was not made on solid ground.
Okay.
Yes.
And one of the things that's been crossing the minds of Kenyans is the place of truth. Because here is NASA, and they're swearing to what it is that they believe happened during the elections. And here is Jubilee on the other hand, and they're also swearing on what they think or what they say happened during the elections. One is saying their votes were stolen from them. The other one is saying that their victory was stolen from them. And each one of them are very solid on their truth. And one wonders, Millie, what is the real truth? Can there be two truths? Or is there anything like a legal truth?
You know, that is why I like the example that is often given of the elephant and the four blind men, you know. Depending on which part of the elephant you're touching, that is your truth. This animal is like a snake, it's slippery because you're on the trunk. This animal is huge because you're on the body. This animal has four, you know, depending on where you're looking at things from. So it is true that someone can actually take an oath and state that this is what I firmly believe, and that is their truth from their own perception.
Let me ask you, just from a practical point of view, because you've been there.
Yes.
Are there some times when, for instance, you may be saying an election was stolen, but you really know it wasn't? But because there's a chance of there's a benefit that you could gain from it, you just just throw your luck. You just do it for your luck. Are there some times like that?
Of course, you cannot put it past politicians, because especially in Kenya, political battles are a do and die situation, and you find that people invest a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of resources to try and secure those seats, because they come with big packs. Therefore, you find that the amount of effort, we saw it when the party primaries were being done by the various political parties, the extent to which somebody would hold on to something. I will give you an example. We made a decision that said that there had been a problem with the setup of the committee in Mombasa for the Jubilee Party. And the next day we had very many applications coming in from the Jubilee Party, from participants or actors within Mombasa County, who were coming to say, and they didn't even come to try and show their own particular case, but they were like, you already said there's a problem here, so this is what you need to show us. So of course, any small thing that they can cling on to, it's like a drowning man, they will hold on to it. But the truth is that, nobody ever wants to believe. That's what I believe from the way I've seen politicians. Because they will tell you, people are telling you you're popular, and they believe them. I think it takes that character for you to be if someone told me, Millie, you're very popular, I would say, really? But for them, when someone tells them you're very popular, they jump onto it and they believe, and therefore they come there really believing that they were the popular candidate. And therefore for them not to have that vote, even when you're seeing things so bluntly, they don't seem to see it. So I think that's why sometimes people say it's like a sickness. It's like a bug.
Sometimes we've had politicians saying, people love me.
Yes.
And they actually openly say,
yes,
confess that they are endeared by the people. But that said, again on the truth aspect in terms of legal arguments.
Yes.
Is there a possibility sometimes that the true truth is overtaken by the legal truth, such that you have the real truth, but you're unable to really express it? And then because you're unable to express it, then the legal truth somehow overtakes, and so justice is lost in that kind of process.
Very true. I think you've put it very well. That happens a lot, because you see, that is why justice is a blindfolded person holding the two scales. Justice does not understand the truth from your perspective. You have to come and show them, and your showing them is done by way of law. There's the evidence law to determine how you're going to present that evidence, so that I can't, for example, just come and bring a picture showing somebody walking in. I must show how that picture was taken. I must show it was not doctored. I must, so that video is authentic. There are all these standards of proof. So yes, that truth, if you're not able to speak your truth in legal terms, sometimes could end up losing you the case. We saw that, for example, in 2013, when the Supreme Court said we are locking out the entire evidence, that we will not take it in. Therefore, proceed in this basis. We saw that this time when, for example, the lawyers who have been presenting the petitioners were unable to state anything. I mean, perhaps they had limited instructions, but they were unable to answer the questions that were being given unto them, were being asked to them of them, where the court is asking them, what does this mean? And they are unable to respond. There may be a response. There could be a response. But if they are the voice of the respondents in court and they are unable to respond then they leave the court with no option but to say there's no response to this particular issue. So in both circumstances, you'd find that, yes, there's a time when justice, the true justice which says that you must speak, and because justice is blind to everything else other than the evidence that you give it. And that evidence must be clean, because you can't fake things, you can't cook things, you can't obtain them illegally and then present it before them. But if you're able to show cleanly and truly that this is what I am stating, then it fails you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when it comes to the argument that the argument that's before us right now, the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And there is the outcome that the judges said that this election of the 8th of August should be annulled.
Yes.
Could it be also that, the Jubilee people had a really good case, but they were in this circumstance unable to express themselves, and therefore NASA, carried the day?
Yes, and I think that basically the unfortunate truth is that that is what many people have been saying, that there are two things. And now this I'm speaking from my personal perspective. There are two question marks that are still left in my head. And that was also confirmed by the court today. That every time the lawyers for the respondents, that is whether it is Jubilee, whether it is Chebukati or IEBC, because those were the three parties that were before the court as respondents, every time their lawyers spoke, you wondered, what are you answering? Because if someone asks you, is this a glass of water? And you go and you start saying, the machine that makes glasses. And I'm asking you whether this is a glass of water. You're not answering that, So someone wonders what they're responding to. Now, that was a question that they weren't able to respond to. Then that therefore means that if the information was available, because remember, lawyers are conduits. They're agents of their clients. If the clients had not relayed this information to them, then it is true that now it is too late, because they were unable to do it at the time when they were supposed to have done it. Yes. Okay.
Again, staying on the moral aspects of this Supreme Court situation and the battle that is before us,
yes.
One of the things that comes out often is the spirituality of the Chief Justice Maraga, because he talks openly about his fear of God and extends that also to his understanding that a country, of course, has to uphold its constitution and the fear of God. So the personal faith is extended now to a national preference in terms of the moral status of a country. Now, one wonders, this open spirituality, does it work for him in terms of public perception, or does it work against him when it comes to what people expect of him as a public servant?
I'm going to give a rounded answer to that. One I'm going to say is that Kenyans are very spiritual. I say this because we ensured that that was put in our constitution. And when you read the preamble of the constitution, it makes reference to God in the constitution, which a lot of countries found strange, because many countries would like to take this very careful approach, taking into account the interests of people. But we actually specified that we uphold divinity as a value in the country, and it is stated there in the preamble of the constitution. So we start from there. Then I want to go to before even Maraga. We had a CJ who was also quite spiritual, and that was Justice Gisheru, who was known to be a practicing Christian. And in fact, at that time, it worked against him for the members of the bar. This is the lawyers practicing there, so that people don't confuse the bar I'm talking about with any other. The lawyers working there. Because there was this clique of judges and magistrates who used to have fellowship prayers in the morning, and it seemed to be like they were favored above others. It was not taken universal. It was being seen as though that religious group, and there was always that issue about it. So it seemed to isolate other members of the judiciary. Now, the difference with Justice Maraga, or C.J. Maraga's spirituality, is that he states it as a fact, but it doesn't interfere with his relations with the rest of the members within that body, so that you'll not find that there's a preference or a leaning towards other members of the bench who also express spirituality. So then that, of course, makes it very personal to him. And it makes people understand that that is why he would expect certain standards of you. I will give an example of, even for the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal, when we're doing the party primaries. And he would come and specifically insist that I have had certain things and I would want to ensure that this is done properly and according to the law. And that was just him trying to ensure that things are done to that extent. Now, the beauty of that is that it has shown people that you can be spiritual without being judgmental, because you'll find that he relates with judges who are not known to be that spiritual. It does not affect so much the relations with the bench, as far as I know, because he has not had that exclusive class of persons. But it does affect it in the fact that everybody knows he will not work on a Saturday, for example. Everyone knows that certain things that, you know, strict adherence to the SDA profession. They also used to be a judge, Justice Angawa, who was a very strict adherent to the SDA church, and would not, for example, even allow you to stand up and speak before her when you had big dangling earrings, because she felt that was not the proper thing to do. So that then affected the way the people related with her court, because she was dictating those principles upon people. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to show, the difference between those who are spiritual and dictate it to how the others relate with them, vis-a-vis those who are known to be spiritual, but it's around them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the big factor here, of course, in his office or in the judge's office, is spirituality does not stand on its own. It translates into trust.
Yes.
That because this person is of this allegiance in terms of him and God, then you kind of just trust him.
Yes.
Now, the thing about that is also it's very risky, because the moment that you are not ruling in favor of the opposite side, then they start questioning, which is this God who does not see our truth? You know, and so there's that politicizing of the God here.
True.
Because he's a God who favors
Yes.
this NASA, for instance,
Yes.
or God who favors. Finally, God has answered our prayers because he is responding to Jubilee. So there's that political dicey interpretation there when you think about it.
True.
But let's stay with the ruling that was done today.
Yes.
And people had been really waiting for it because it was supposed to substantiate a lot of things. You may have listened to a good part of it, but not the whole of it, because you had to come here, and I'm sure that you'd have wanted to maybe listen to the whole of it. But what if you were to break it down in a very simple way to our viewers? What were the highlights that you were able to pick for the section that you were able to engage?
Yeah, thank you. I want to state that one of the beauties of having this reasoned decision is that then it gives people these truths that we've been discussing. It gives people an opportunity, if you explain it well enough, for them to be able to say, oh, well, okay. You know, in a court case, unfortunately, there's always a loser and a winner. It's just the nature of litigation. So it gives people the opportunity to be able to understand, so that's how you thought. And then they can be able to stop feeling that they were victimized in one way or another, but understand that that is your reasoning. And the reasoning of the court, we were able to see it today by the reading, although they summarized it because they didn't go for the majority decision, they didn't go into the depth of it, but they did focus on bringing out the issues as they identified them, and then their analysis of those issues and their final determination. And one of the key things that came out for me was the fact that they were very categorical that politics, if I may say it in summary, that politics should be left to politicians. Institutions must do what they're expected to do. So if politicians are playing politics out there, that is what we expect of them. When a politician comes to you, you know that he is a politician. He is likely to play politics. He is expected to do that. But for you as an institution with a mandate to carry out a certain role, you must carry out that role in a manner that would be able for the politics not to get into the work. What I'm saying is that simply what the majority decision was saying is that we want you to be the referee.
That's the IBC.
Yes. And once you are the referee, when you tell us that these were the goals that were scored, even if we argue and say there was an offside, there was this goal that entered through the back or through the which side, you're able to show us, here are my recordings of every angle. These were the 3 goals, and I'm sticking by that.
Okay. So the independence
and professionality.
Okay.
Yes.
That was a big emphasis.
That was a big emphasis.
It's interesting that you can summarize that, whereas we've taken so many hours to, you've done it in a minute, or less, But thanks for that
Yes.
really crystallized
But there's the other side, the minority. Yes, but also equally important was the minority decisions from the 2 dissenting judges. And I think that for me, what stood out in the 2 decisions was the fact that particularly from the Judge Njoki Ndung'u's decision, was to say that every player is important, because she laid a lot of emphasis to the roles of the various actors, including the questions that people have had, for example, saying, why do we need these observers? What value do they add? She emphasizes the fact that the observers have a role to play, and if everybody, including media and every personality who is engaged in that process, or every institution engaged in that process, if we all played our role, the game ends right there. It makes it much more easier, because that's where the game is played, that's where the game is. It makes it easier than coming to ask somebody who is outside here to come and then determine what you had done when you could have agreed when you're all there.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is just maybe from an analytical point of view.
Yes.
Because IEBC, before the elections day, had given some very robust confidence as to how the process is going to go.
Yes.
And we all felt that this is a really, foolproof kind of situation. And we felt very confident that we are going to have, for the first time, a really credible result. From your take, where did the crumbling begin to take place? Because could it be out of a political pressure? Because all these wonderfully laid out systems, they seem to have crumbled under a particular pressure. And IBC kind of spinned out of control as far as whatever they had planned was concerned. What would have been the trigger to this? From your analysis of everything, what's the trigger?
For me, I would say that I think the buck ends with the head of the institution. As a member of a board myself, I know that when we were preparing to go and conduct the party primaries, one of the things that you do and require is you understand in the first place what needs to happen. You must understand that. And then therefore you get the people, the technical people who are expected to do that, to come and explain to you as the policymakers, because the buck ends with you. You are the ones who are supposed to come and explain to people later on that when we say the goals were 3, they were 3 and this is it. And that's who the people will listen to. You must ask them, how are you ensuring that this will be done and this will be done and that will be done? And raise questions and concerns then. Now, it seems that that did not happen because the 2 leaked memos from Chebukati during this process have been very, very clear that he's asking very pertinent questions that should have been asked before, that should have been clarified before they went into the process. If the policy arm does not keep a strict check over the Secretariat, then it becomes very easy for the Secretariat, who have been there over a period. Most of the Secretariat have been there since the days of ECK, the days of Kivuitu the late. They have been there. It is just the commissioners and the name of the institution that has changed. If you do not have, and therefore if they have been, because human is to err, if they have been these people who are amenable to being corrupted in one way or another, they still remain there. And the only way that you can check and be sure that they would not allow themselves to be put in such situation is to keep a strict eye on them, so that they know someone is checking, so that they know when I come and I say this, there will be questions and I will have to answer them. And therefore, they do things according to the law and according to the procedure. If you ensure that that was done, then we probably would not be where we are today.
Okay, and of course that's a point that professionalism going forward,
yes,
with the IBC that is going to run the next, the repeat election.
Yes.
That professionalism will be
key.
extremely important,
Yes.
as well as independence.
Yes.